G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm executed joined today by Grim or Starjump Grim. How you doing, mate?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, I have to invite someone else on because Agrid's a slack ass and currently in Europe going everywhere, so I need someone else to fill along. And I basically went, well, this episode I want to do is one on ships, and I think really in the community, as in Stars as a whole, you'd probably be the next biggest after us or as big as us type of thing. You know what I mean? As
Well, I
in,
appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah, you'd be the next person I would go to after myself type of thing.
Cool.
So long story short, we're going to go through all the. This is the tinfoil hat episode. If you saw it from last year, which was the blue, no, it was yellow silhouette video. I think
hmm
essentially this is the blue silhouette video. So if I cut it over to the, gotta find the right
Which I think
buttons.
these silhouette videos tend to be, that CIG release, tend to be some of the most reviewed videos for the next 12 months.
Yeah. So we're gonna knock off. We're gonna go like we're gonna go blast through them all, and then we're gonna come back to ones that are more difficult, right? So this one, I think everyone kind of knows what this is by now. What do you what? Tell me what it is because you know what it is.
Yeah, this is obviously the Argo CSV FM, the fabrication module variant, because we already received the
Yeah.
SM.
Yeah.
So pretty clear their work. There, a lot of the base building vehicles are in active production. That's what you'll get from this silhouette video, and this is the first one.
Yep.
This one builds the medium stuff. This is the medium builder.
Yep. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Next one, according to the files, there is a Grey Cat CSV, and it has some kind of missiles on it, right? So it looks like it's either a tracked or wheeled vehicle, some kind of military thing. The other thing I'll point out as well is a lot of the, as you can see in a lot of the images, you can kind of tell roughly what type of vehicle it is by the people standing around it. So
hmm
that has actually been one of the most useful things for deduction, right?
Yeah.
For process of elimination stuff is it's allowed us to get further than we've ever got before with some of this stuff, right? And I'll explain that as we go through in some of the cases. I know you'll know one of the ones I'm talking about because we've talked about this a bit already. But
Yeah, when you're
yeah,
looking at stuff like this too, it's important to remember that like there's small details in this that most people probably wouldn't catch, but like one of the things I look for is like the shape of lights because some manufacturers use circle lights, some of them use long streams, some of them use square lights like this vehicle has. So you have to kind of look for some of those commonalities.
don't worry, we'll be getting into that real soon.
Yeah. Yes.
We
Yes, we will.
really need to have the tinfoil hats for this one because it does go to crazy
We
town
should.
when you do these videos. But yeah, all right, going on to the next one. So this one is probably one that we're not going to be able to touch too much. The only thing that I'll probably say is it could be the building variant of this vehicle, or known as the MCV, but it is significantly shorter than what it was at Citizencon last year. But there are a lot of wheels, like a
Mhm.
lot. And if you kind of work that out, it is more likely to be the build variant of this than anything else I've seen. But it is distinctly higher than any of the other variants. But essentially, I think you'd agree with me, it's some form of Spartan variant. And as soon as I kind of realize it's a vehicle, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but I just kind of lose a bit of interest after that.
Yeah.
Um, sorry.
Well, and this will come up a lot in this video, but you got to look at the people surrounding the vehicle. They're
Yep.
carrying guns. It's got a big gun on
Yep.
top, so
Mm,
it could very well be combat related. There's you have
yep.
to take those cues. So yeah,
Might be tailored at building base defenses, as an example.
right.
It's clearly got a military skew to it. So put it that way. Yeah.
hmm
Right. This one's real obvious. It's the Ghost. If you know what that is,
hmm
the updated Hornet Ghost. This one's the updated Tracker, so we can kind of breeze past those ones.
Right.
They're really obvious. This one's the Metapin or the Medical Terrapin. You can kind of tell again because this time someone's got a stretcher.
Yes.
Makes it kind of
Yep.
obvious, right?
hmm
This one, by now, if you've heard me talk about it, it's really obvious. This is not a drill head. This is a salvaging head. We know from in the files that there is essentially a ship called the Misfortune, and it's exactly the same dimensions as a Prospector. Funny, it kind of looks like one. I'm not surprised.
hmm
So, would you assume that this is some form of onboarding task for someone at CIG, or would have been, I should say?
I do, and I think a lot of the variants here, not only the Hornets, but the Ballista variant and stuff like that, are the perfect onboarding vehicles or for new members coming onto the team. And if
Yeah.
you look at everything going into production in the next 12 months, it's not a lot of small stuff like in the last video from last sitcon
Mm,
the year before. There
mm.
was a lot of big ships in this video, and that can only mean there's more ship team members,
It's like
over the
they've
last 13.
learned, and now all of a sudden they want to
Yep.
do more. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Um.
And I'll tell you, I personally,
Mm,
based off how much CIG is putting into the whole base building thing,
yep.
how important it is to 1.0, the fact that all the ships related to base building are in production,
Mm,
Pioneer, build, all that.
mm,
I kind of look at all these ships through a little bit different lens, right? So, for example, a ship like this, let's say this is
mm,
the salvaging prospector. Initially, I
mm,
was like, why do we need this? We have the Vulture. But then
mm,
I got reminded the Vulture's a very popular ship, first off, because
mm.
it's a salvage ship you can do by
Yep.
yourself. And it's obvious that salvage, mining, refining are going to be three things vitally
Mm,
important to base building. So I can totally see more ships
yep.
in the same class doing the same thing. So
But
there needs to be a competitor to the vulture. There needs to be a competitor to the prospector. You know what I mean? The
eventually,
solo mining ship.
but they
Yeah,
didn't want to.
eventually.
They didn't want to double up early. I know that from talks. But
Right.
there's a couple things I want to go over here. So the first thing you'll
Okay.
notice is there's two people standing near the elevator there, right? Now, why would
Mhm.
you need an elevator if you still had the entrance to this? I think the entrance on this has been blocked by a second seat. And so you essentially have one person operating this tractor beam and one person operating the scrapper type of thing. And I think this is a two-person, so that takes it, it's a little bit different from the Vulture, but I think it's
Mhm.
tailored towards base building cleanup. So salvaging
Mhm.
buildings and salvaging ground vehicles. And I think there is room for that because again, you realize once the vehicle system, the atmospheric system comes in, the Vulture's got to essentially do this to salvage stuff, and it won't be able to do that once gravity essentially comes in. So that
Mhm.
leaves room for something like this, where one person can pick up the piece and the other person can strip the piece. So it's a teamwork approach, and it is noted to having two seats in the files. It also has that elevator is also a salvage elevator, so it can actually take salvage up and down.
Yep.
And I also think kind of where the saddlebags come out on the prospector, instead of having two, it's probably just one. But that's essentially where the salvage will come out, and then you have to kind of pick it back up and take it back into the ship, or something
Yeah, and
to that nature, or even externally put
yeah,
it on or something. You can't tell in
and
this image.
to reinforce the idea that this could be a in atmosphere focused salvager,
Mm.
if those are engines that are folded downwards in the back there, then those
Mm.
could be some pretty hefty VTOL capabilities. So,
The prospector has those too.
right, they do. So
Yeah.
again, this could be the perfect platform for that. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, changed from what the prospector was, but
Yeah.
maybe this was like the natural fit. You know what I mean?
It also allows it to tie in with the prospector and the expanse, and and maybe a whole A, and you get that little beginners
Yep.
advanced starter pack, so you can all just do a little bit of everything on your own if you wish to do that. It kind of makes it
Yep.
easy. So this one,
Yep.
this one's probably the easiest of the more complicated ones we're going to go over today. So this one here now, because it's not a combat person standing in the background, and because the Guardian appeared in last year's Silhouette video, in the files, there's a variant of the Guardian called the Qui or the Chi, right? And it basically in Japanese that translates to energy or swift movement. It's a racing variant. Again, if it's Mirai, it's either combat or racing. So I think
Yep.
this is the racing variant of the Guardian. That's my thoughts. What
Mhm.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I originally have just been saying it's the Guardian. A lot of people disagreed with me, saying that
Mm,
the shape looks too different from the last silhouette. I just think that silhouette from last year was very,
mm.
very old and
Well,
updated in different
there
angles.
is no guns on it, as an
There's no
example.
guns on it. So after you told me that it was probably a racing variant, I thought more and more about it. That seems the most logical
Mm,
conclusion, I think, to what we're seeing here. Yeah,
yeah.
because on the Furies, which I know are not a one-to-one comparison to this,
Mm,
not only are the guns very visible, they're
yep.
literally right up front mounted. I mean, you
Mm,
can't miss them. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I would expect on a Mirai
Mm,
Guardian heavy fighter variant that you would see the guns.
mm,
I wouldn't think they'd be like all hidden for some strange
mm.
reason. So yeah, I think race and variant. I think you're right on that one.
just here, I almost think that looks like a little bit of a Fury LX type of wing thing too. You know how it's got the extra
Yeah,
fins and stuff on it. So
yeah.
I
The
yeah.
the only thing I think on this one that is throwing me,
Mhm.
and and I actually think it's either CIG kind of like trying to mess with us, or
Mhm.
maybe this does have is the landing gears. Because doesn't the Furies kind of like hover when they land? Am I wrong? Or do they
Yes,
set down?
but it's also a snub, right? And
It's
and
also a sub.
and
It is a lot heavier
I've
ship. So
I've gone over this with a lot of people. You got to realize, as a snub, it lacks details because it's just so much smaller than any other ship.
right.
You can't like this is going to be the first real Mirai ship, right?
Yeah, I
And it's
agree.
probably
I
going to
agree.
have no internals. So then there's room
Mm,
for another ship that comes down the line that has internals as well. So
yeah, yeah.
it's
And
slowly
it's
unfolding Mirai, basically.
exactly, and while they weren't originally Mirai, but now they are, I'm pretty sure the Razors, they have gears and stuff, so it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
totally out of sync for Mirai, but it's just something that caught my eye. But again, like you said, this is obviously a big ship. You can see the person standing next to it. It's not exactly small.
Um,
I'm
I
guessing 20 something meters long, 26 meters or so. I don't know.
I'm thinking it's either a light or medium fighter from Mirai. And I think we're probably going to see something bigger. But some people think it's a heavy
Hmm.
fighter, like a Vanguard. I guess we'll find that out in time. That's not, and when I'm saying this, I mean the normal Guardian, not this one, obviously. So we'll see that in time. But
Yeah, you
yeah,
know what? Now that you're saying that, I think probably medium makes more sense.
yeah.
It just
You got to
yeah,
remember their wings. You got to think of it like an X-wing, right? So they're all
yeah.
kind of wings. You're trying to chop it off, and the body becomes a lot smaller. You know, like
Right,
yeah.
because because I think like the Razor, I guess the Razor could almost be considered a little bit of a light fighter. Isn't there a combat variant of it? I forget.
No,
Which
it's got like the default's a
what is it?
racing variant, and then it's got like a performance racing variant, and then there's a stealth variant,
A
and
stealth variant.
the
Okay,
stealth variant is clearly aimed at solo scouting, which will be
gotcha.
really
Okay,
good for military. It is going to be exceptionally good.
okay.
Um,
So Mirai then does not have a light, medium, or heavy fighter
yeah,
then. So that's okay. So there's a lot of
mm,
open ground for them to cover with Mirai.
yeah. Just realized there's an image I need to open and I don't have a copy of it. So this is one we're going to come back to, as is the next one. So we'll come back to
Yeah.
those. I need I need to get that image of the Reliant. If you have a copy of that, can you send that to me? You know, the one from your stream the other day. Um,
Oh, the one that you talking about, the Drake concept art element
no, no, no.
image.
The Reliant concept art is the one I need.
Okay.
I forgot to grab that. Anyway, so this is as far as I can tell, this is the Apollo, but you think it might be a variant of the Apollo, and I think you may be right because much like the Kerapan, you would just copy and paste that person into this scene, and you would have the stretcher. That's a normal person standing there, not
Hmm.
so I think you might be onto something where this is in fact a variant of the Apollo. I don't
Yeah.
think it tells us much about what it is. I think all it kind of tells us and you think there's some other small cues. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, I will say this. The I did send you that image, by the way, and
Thank you.
that image is Corsair concept art. That's where I got off the subscriber vault listed under the Corsair,
That's
just
not the
FYI.
it's not the one I was after. That's all right.
Oh, okay.
It was the Reliant with the wings folded up. I'll find it in a minute. That's
Oh,
fine.
okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to find that. I don't have it
yeah.
up.
No, it's fine.
So yeah, on the Apollo, I will say, just from someone who's messed around with that model a lot, and I could be wrong here, but this model
Mhm.
does look evolved for sure. So there's been active work on the Apollo. That's my speculation here, because the body does have some contour and silhouette differences than what I am used to with the Apollo.
Yep.
It looks like it mostly retained its size. I can say that. Maybe grown a little bit, but mostly has retained its size. I agree with you that I would expect to see some sort of medical apparatus out, around the ship. And the Apollo's always been a little interesting to me, because it it's a ship that leans into a niche gameplay loop, medical, which I do
Mhm.
consider a niche gameplay loop or a secondary gameplay loop. However, there's two variants of the ship, and they both are medical. So I always thought that was kind of strange, and that I personally think when CIG's building stuff like this, just for efficiency and cranking out more ships with less work, if they've got two variants like that, it would totally make
Mm,
sense to do a variant of the Apollo that is a general purpose ship, meaning it can carry a little bit of cargo, it's got some monks in
mm.
it. And some people may say, oh, well, RSI's got that in the Constellation or in the this or that. And that's true. It just makes sense if you're going to put the time and effort to make two medical ships, why not make a third variant that can serve a lot more people. You maximize dollars on the work that you put into the ship, essentially.
The real world does that as well. They
Yeah,
use it
yeah,
where they can. You have different
yeah,
ships in World War II. Some had armor. They stripped the armor off. They modified them as they
yeah.
learned things. I think it is silly not to essentially essentially double or triple the number of ships we can have just by adding variants or small changes of the hull or something like that. So at least they look
Yeah.
different. Again, kind of like what they do with the racing variants with extra fins. They might put another example would be the Aquila versus the other Connies. Little things
hmm
like that really do change it up enough to make it a standalone variant, in my opinion, or a modified
Yeah.
variant. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've also heard a lot of people say how much they love the Apollo, like the look of it,
Mm,
but also they aren't interested in medical gameplay. So I've
yeah.
heard that quite a bit. But yeah, anyways, I will say it does look like there's been quite a bit of work done to it, and the ship does look a little chunkier
Mm,
from like a body thickness standpoint. Like there's a lot more bottom like detail there.
mm,
Could be just the angle, but it looks like they've given it a little bit of heft, which it kind of needed
mm,
at its current at the old like hollow model metrics.
mm.
There's really not a lot of room to play around with in there.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right, so the last ones here are really kind of obvious. Again, there is military people standing round. This is the TAC because they've
yeah,
got guns. If it was build, it would be normal people. And the max,
yeah.
well, as of today, the max is out essentially because we're about to get
Right.
AIE. Perseus, really obvious. The guns do look a bit bigger, but yeah, Perseus.
Yep. Definitely
Ironclad,
changed.
we can definitely agree on that. I
Yep.
think the only thing
Ironclad
is
for
that you
sure.
can kind of tell that it doesn't have the command module attached. And by the way,
Right.
you can actually go in here and change some of the colors and you can see a bit more detail. And the
Gotcha.
last
Okay.
one being the Pioneer. Right.
Pioneer.
So now I want to go back to these two, which I've spent
Yeah.
a lot of time going over to the point that I'm going to click us over to Photoshop. We are now in Photoshop. And I'm going to leave this one for last because I actually think that's the most interesting of the two in a way, as in I haven't seen anyone else talk about it. But this one. Now, a lot of people think that this is actually a Drake ship, but I am pretty convinced it is actually not a Drake ship. And I've talked about with you extensively about this. If I go back
hmm
to the browser for a second here, I've actually managed to get those images up. So the
Okay.
original concept of the Reliant had the wings
hmm
folding up, right? So, to kind of beat it to the punch, I actually think that this ship is a Mirai ship, right? And I'm going to go through and explain why. A lot of people shoot me down straight away because they have whatever reason they have. But when I go through all of it, I think I'm going to unfold it enough that people will understand. So, the only manufacturer in the game that has rotating ships is this thing, and it's the
hmm
Reliant by Misk, right?
Right.
So we're currently going between Twist and Miro, right? So that's what I'm trying to sell you on, right? And if you actually look at some of the other images of the Reliant, I want you to look at these fins here, right? So
hmm
you can see
Yep.
that when it's vertical, it's got these fins. Now, if you actually go back to Photoshop, you can see that there is a giant fin on the bottom right hand side. You could probably point to it better than I can because it's closer to
hmm
you. If you want to point to it for
Yep.
people, that one,
Right. Yeah. Right there. You
yeah.
got it. My fingers cut off, but you get it.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that kind of was the tip of the hat. The other part
Yeah.
is this only has two wings. It has one very large wing and one small wing. Now, if you think about how the Corsair flies, and a lot of the ships in this game fly, they are fake asymmetrical ships. As in,
Right.
they have equal weight on one side to the equal weight on the other, right?
Yeah.
And basically, so you have two small wings on the Corsair and one big one, and it's really the same weight, right? So in
Yeah.
this case, when you've got one big one and one little one, that doesn't work, right? And so
hmm
what I firmly believe is these wings rotate to go vertical. And I'm now about to go through why in several several stages, right? And because of that verticality, which leads you to the Reliant. And the last part is, if you see that guy that's standing there, I might actually be able to zoom in here. Hold on. No, I can't. The wrong way. No, I'm on the wrong tool. Hang on, give me a second. This is the problem when you go to Photoshop, all the tools change. That guy's standing there with a gun.
Yeah.
Right? And if that guy's standing there with a gun, that means it's combat. And if it's combat, that means it's Mirai, because Mist doesn't have combat. This is what I was alluding to before about being able to tell what things were because they put the characters in. So yeah, but if I turn
and there's a and about that asymmetricalness too, it was going pretty far back at this point, but it was back when the Corsair was going into active production. And they showed off the reconcepted model. This is when it was still in like gray box or whatever.
Yep.
CIG, I remember this very clearly. They made a point of saying that a lot of the asymmetric stuff was very tricky, and that they were going to make visual changes that made ships look asymmetric, but that they actually weren't. A good case in point is the Corsair. If you go back and look at the Corsair's original holo model, its cockpit was slightly offset from the center line. Well, when they reconcepted it, the concept or the cockpit is now in the center line of the ship. Even though the model looks like it's off center, it's not. It's in the center line. So
again, that trick of weight.
This is something CIG has brought up before.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I played with the levels, and so by turning on a couple of levels here, I can really up the brightness. But when I do that, you'll see that it's brought out a few more details. So we can clearly tell that there's some kind of cockpit here. But you'll also notice as you zoom in, and if you play with a couple of the lights here, you can actually see that there's a curvature to these. They are not straight and sharp like Drake. There's an actual curvature. And again, if it's not coming through on the YouTube video, you may need to do this yourself, as in zoom in on the video and have a look. But you'll also notice that it's got the same kind of antenna and stuff. If I go really quickly back to the browser again, you can see that it's got similar antennae and that to what's on the Reliant, right? I do think that this is essentially a bigger Reliant, and I'm about to explain why. Is if you picture a shark fin, oh God, I've lost my place here. Right. This is, I firmly believe this is where the really big fin goes to, because you can see there's a slight curve here, and then it goes completely flat, like it's been chopped, like a shark fin that's just been chopped off. Right. And so what I believe is the left-hand side one here, the bigger one, you'll also notice it appears to have almost like a bigger gap. So the rotation for the small one goes down, and the rotation for the big one comes up. And these two here, I believe, are guns, and it puts a gun turret on top of the ship. I could be wrong, but I believe that this one essentially rotates onto the top. So you've almost got this piece at the back that rotates at the back, and then it'll line kind of back up with the body of the ship. So this thing kind of lands vertical, as in the cab, lands vertical and takes off vertical and doesn't move at all. Where on the Reliant, the back part stays completely stationary and the front rotates. In the case of this, the cab doesn't rotate at all. Everything rotates around it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And you think this would be Mirai, not Misk?
Yeah. Again, because it's... Oh, I just realized I was on the wrong screen. I must say that. Sorry. Yeah. So, yeah, again, I'll zoom in again and show you what I was just talking about. Sorry, I thought I was on the right... So, in here, you can see...
Oh, no, yeah, you were on the right. You were on the right.
Well, it was for you, but not for them. You got to remember what you and I see is different from what they see.
That's right.
So
right.
this curve here, and then it just looks like it's been chopped off. So that's what I'm talking about for you guys. And again, I think this one here rotates up. Sorry, this one rotates down, and then this big one rotates up, and you'd see this kind of turret thing would then be on top.
Yep.
So yeah, I hope that kind of explains it for those watching. Sorry, I got that wrong.
And it could be its angle, and that we're just not seeing any negative space because of overlap. But the other thing that really stands out to this ship for me is the landing. I hesitate to call it a landing gear. It's the base that it's landed on. It almost looks like they plopped some geometry there, and it's like hovering or something. I don't know. It's really weird, like sort of landing mechanism. Obviously, maybe it's just a big gear that opens up on the bottom.
I've looked at it. It's two kind of... So if you think about it, if you've got like that flat kind of vertical cab, and up... I have to go back so they can see it. So up here, you've got where you'd kind of come in and move. this kind of would rotate, like one leg rotates up on this side and one leg rotates up in on this side. So basically, that part of the ship is essentially just taken up with landing gear. It just kind
Yeah.
of comes down like that. I can't quite like it.
Right.
It's kind of like a yeah.
I originally was thinking this was some sort of Drake heavy fighter. I think
Mm,
one thing going against that theory is you would think a Drake heavy fighter would try to lean in and look aggressive looking a la the Buccaneer or even the Corsair to some degree. And this really doesn't do that at all. I mean, yes, it's got the wings that fold
yeah,
up, but other than that, there's really no shared
yeah.
DNA
Drake
to any
is
of the other Drake stuff.
Drake is very, very simple. Like even with the Corsair, the reason it's got wings is so it can glide in atmosphere.
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
do any. You go look at all their ships; they don't have any form of rotation or anything like that. The only ship that does that currently, that really has that complicated, the whole ship rotating, is the Reliant. And that's kind
Yeah.
of when I was going through this with Agrid, that was kind of the stuff that he was saying, right? And then once we realized it was combat, it had to be Mirai, right? So unless it
Mhm.
is a Mirai kind of shiv, I just kind of my whole thing comes back to how bad the combat is in the Reliant, right?
Right.
It just doesn't work so well. So are they going to do something with this where the wings actually rotate as it flies? Like, because can
Mhm.
that be a thing? So you can like have it spin around you as you fly, so you can move your wings so they can't be shot. I don't
Mhm.
know. But it it's not that much of a mystery once you start to go look at the older stuff like the Reliant. And I think I might have got it. A lot of people disagree with me, but again, when you zoom in on the image, you can see the curves. It clearly has curves in the light. I don't know if it comes through on the YouTube videos, but it clearly comes through. Um, I don't know. Did you see it or not? I don't know.
I did, yeah.
I
I
can
there's
see it in
some
Photoshop. So yeah.
Yeah, I could see the little bit of, like, a little curvature, almost like a
Mm,
wave kind
yeah.
of effect on them. Yeah.
I'll zoom back in and just because I don't know if we did it while they were looking, but you got to turn this layer off to kind of see it. But yeah, there's definitely a gradiential curve there.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, right. So that's that one. Now I'm going to go on to the last one, which
Interesting. It's I'm really eager to find out more about that ship, though.
yeah. So this one really eluded me for a time. I honestly thought for a while it might be Anvil, but I actually
Mm.
think it's Consolidated Outland.
Mm.
And I'm going to go through a couple of things why. So if I actually go back to the browser, we'll start with the Citizencon video. So this is this one. So
Yep.
what I want you to look at here is the struts on the walls, so the triangles and stuff like that. So look
Yep.
at the language. You're looking at high level geometry, lots of angles, lots of triangles and stuff like that. And there's this one little tiny part here in Photoshop I want you to look at, and it's the stairs.
Yeah.
There is a triangle very clearly in those stairs,
Yeah.
and it possibly looks like there's two more, but because it's at an angle, you can't quite see them. Right?
Mhm.
So that's what was the first thing that led me to it. Also, you'll notice the shape of the lights are kind of hexagony,
Mhm.
and there's four of them, and the width of the head as well, and
Yep.
the slant of the roof is similar to the Nomad, right? So that's a couple other things.
Yep.
But the thing that really sold it for me, and I'm the only one that I'm aware of that's found this, is actually this back leg here. So again, if I turn the lights on, I'm talking about
Mhm.
just here, and again, I have to kind of massage it a little bit here. So you wouldn't be able to do this in a live video, but if you keep looking as I kind of massage it, you can clearly tell there is a leg there. Yeah,
Yeah, I would agree.
yeah. And I went through the shape language on it, and it reminds me of the Mustang. Remember
Hmm.
the old
Okay. Yeah.
Mustang, how it used to land on the ground and it had that kind of leg forward and then back thing?
Yes. Right. Yep.
And I think that's what it is. I
Yeah, that's
think they've
interesting.
brought back that styling. So this is kind of like some kind of crossbreed between the Nomad and the Mustang. And that's kind of where I went with it. But I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? About and it's clearly a medium-sized ship. So we're looking at both these ships actually are medium. So we're looking at a Mirai
Yep.
medium and a Nomad medium is what I believe they are.
Yeah.
Again, this has a combat person in it as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be consolidated outland. Again, just going by how CIG tends to develop stuff, if especially if they're working on a large ship from a manufacturer, there's going to be some roll-on smaller ships that are just percolate out of those assets.
It's funny you thought
Um,
that, because I thought
yeah,
this would be the perfect ship to reload the Pioneer.
yeah, exactly. And so I think it could be some sort of consolidated outland ship.
Mm.
Originally, I was even thinking maybe some sort of, you know, crafting or like crafting ship, not base building, but just crafting focused ship. However, the guys with the guns, you know, that
Well,
doesn't feel
well,
right.
the guys with the guns throw me off a little bit. But the other
Yeah,
thing is, I think, and this is why I think it might be military, right? And I'll go through my step process. So
yeah,
notice how low to the ground it is. Like, look how low it
mhm,
gets to the ground. And I went, this looks like a vehicle transporter. And then I remembered the Pioneer can make vehicles, right?
right.
So again, if you can make if it's a vehicle transporter, it has a military connotation as well. So I think that's why it's a guy with a gun. This is their
Mhm.
vehicle transporter for the Pioneer and resupply for the Pioneer.
Cool. That'd be interesting. Yeah, that would be interesting. You know, another. I wouldn't assign it to this because of the dudes with guns there,
Mm,
but it makes me think of other things that they could lean into for consolidated outland. For example,
mm.
you know, the Pioneer has the integrated extractors in the leg. It'd be really interesting to
Yeah,
see a ship that has just integrated extractors on it that lands and pulls up resources. So it's like a mining ship, but it's more of a resource
yeah.
gathering ship. You know, something like that. Again, that's another ship I could see falling under consolidated outland. Not that I'm saying that that's what
Mm.
this is. The other weird thing on this ship is it's got that little protruding bit on the far starboard
Yeah.
side, right above
A-
that guy's head.
again, if you actually go through this video a little bit, I'll see if I can find it. There is a
Mhm.
really good shot just here.
Yeah,
And it's a little bit back actually. Bear with me. It's gonna there. This weird angle of their beams is
hmm
almost perfectly on par with the beam here.
yep,
It's got a
yeah,
very similar. I know it's got the light in the way, but it's got a very similar shape language. So yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot
And
of things
consolidated outland,
that point to it for
they're
me.
their ships are very angular. There's a lot
Mm,
of flat surfaces on them, not
mm,
only with the Nomad, but obviously even smaller things like the
yeah,
hover quad, all the way up to the Pioneer. The Pioneer's
yeah,
got very flat and angular surfaces, so
yeah.
it falls in line there.
Well, it makes sense.
Eh,
They're working on the Pioneer. Why wouldn't they take the opportunity to work on one more? Like, it really
yeah,
makes a lot of
exactly, hundred
sense.
percent,
You
hundred
know,
percent, yeah. And I think there could even be an additional consolidated outland ship
absolutely.
that's just not in the video. That's
Yeah,
in the mix. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Agreed.
Something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So that's kind of everything. That they are some pretty out there ideas. I know, especially the Reliant one. I've got a lot of kickback from people on that, but I really stress you to go zoom in on the images and look for the curves because they are there. And when you see that shark fin thing, and it's like the shark fin's being cut off, you can start to see that it's got a lot more, especially in the curvature where the shark fin is. That is definitely not Drake because they do not have curves, right?
right,
and
right.
and again, I can bring that back up in Photoshop real quick because I think that is the real nail in the coffin for me. That was when I really kind of went, nah, this is not Drake. This is this is
You
something
one
else.
Yeah, one thing you would expect from Drake as well is a lot more like external greebling and
Yeah.
you know little bits of detail and stuff. I think one of the smoothest ships Drake has
Mm,
was the Corsair, but even when it went into production, they kind of upped the amount of like
mm,
stuff on the outside. You know what I mean? Remember
yeah.
what Ben Curtis said when he was talking about Drake? Now he was referring to all Drakes, but
Mm,
when they talk in the Ironclad is Rad video that
mm,
the you know Inside Star Citizen episode, Ben Curtis specifically says that you know one of the design hallmarks of Drake is a lot of big bulky elements
yeah.
surrounded by thin cladding and detail work.
Yeah.
So you know that's very clearly, and you see that in the Ironclad. So it's very
Mm,
this ship just seems to lack a lot of that. There is a little bit of it, but there's a lot of just like straight lines and stuff on that
mm,
hull.
yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I think we'll
That
kind of
that curvature, sorry, one more last thing, that
go.
curvature on the very front of that silhouette there on
Mm,
that kind of curves up into the wing,
the dome.
that feels
Yeah.
very un-Drake too to me.
Well, it feels. You know who it does feel like? Like the ball turret on the Reliant.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
when I just started
It's
again, I might be just biased that I just kept seeing things, but like I just kept seeing the Reliant over and over and over. And the other thing I want to point out too is when the Reliant first, like when Mirai first came out, they went, well, we're going to take the Razors over to Mirai. We looked at taking the Reliance over, but in the end, we decided against it because essentially Mirai is racing and combat, and the only combat ship that Misk have now is the Tanner. And I actually think what they should do is go back and make the Tanner a Mirai variant. Like they should port it over, change some of the textures and stuff like that, and make it so it's like, you know how you got the Starfarer that's a collaboration between Aegis and Misk. It's probably one of they could have made the Tanner like one of the very first ships they ever worked on, and so it's a Mirai Misk hybrid. Is how I would do it.
Is that Aegis Misk collaboration lore? Is that also applied to the freelancer Misk?
So
was there ever any story behind that?
No, any ship that is military based by Misk has a green armor. So the Tanner has a green armor skin, the Freelancer has a green armor, and the Starfarer has a green armor. It's just how Misk shows armor. It's like a green armor thing. Yeah.
Right. Can probably expect the same from the TAC. They'll probably be a greenish gray kind of thing going on.
I hope we actually see more collabs in the future, because still to this date, the only collab we've really ever had has been the Starfarer Gemini. So what would you like to hear from people in the comments below? Because I know what we're going to hear. We're going to hear like how crazy we are, tinfoil hat, all that. But is there anything you would like them to hear from them specifically?
Well, obviously, it'd be cool to hear, what your theories on, any of these ships could be. Obviously, there's several different ground variants and stuff there, but also the ones that are known, things like the Apollo, the Ironclad, the Pioneer. What are your thoughts about some of those ships going into production in the next 12 months? Is any of that surprising? Does any of it seem strange from just a priority standpoint? I think one of the big things for me is seeing obviously how much seems to be centered around base building and that push. Pioneer, and even though that was the Starlancer TAC, we know that they are working on the build. The CSV FM was in there. There's also what looks to be several different or a couple different industrial type things. You know what I mean? So who knows? I don't know. It seems to be they do seem to be leaning into that. So that speaks to a little bit of their priorities moving forward.
For sure. I think the last thing I did forget to mention is it was heavily implied to me by one of the devs that ship is not Drake, by the way, and that's what made me go look even more and more. So I'll just say that. But as for comments here, I'd just like to know what you think. Like, if it isn't Drake or it isn't Misk Mirai, what do you think it would be? And I just can't think of anything else either could Agrid that rotates like that. And so once you kind of factor that in, that it's got to rotate, it kind of really, it throws Drake out the window, and it throws every other manufacturer, because the only other ship that does that currently is the Reliant. We even at one point was playing with the idea of, what if it's a Reliant rework? That was something else we played with, right? And moving them all over to Mirai. I don't know.
I think one other thing that's important to remember, because I've in the last few days, or actually since Citizencon, I've seen a lot of people say this mistakenly. While the 2953 Citizencon showed vehicles that CIG was hoping to release within the next 12 months, John Crew did not say that this time. He said these are the vehicles going into production in the next 12 months. So it's very important to remember that. So for example, just because the Pioneer's in there, I don't think we're getting the Pioneer in 12 months. I think that's going to be a year and a half, 2-year build minimum. So just keep that in mind with some of these ships. There could be a longer runway with some of those than you think.
I think a lot of the bigger ones get kicked down the road a bit, don't they?
With the but what that also means, for example, is that there's probably a lot of ships that they are working on or plan on working on that are not in that video.
Agreed.
Because that video is now not what is just in the next 12 months. That's just stuff that probably will go into production in the next 12 months.
And that's what happened. That's what happened this year. There was a couple of, I think the Legionnaire got missed. We still don't have the Guardian. And I wouldn't be surprised if one of these two don't make it either. Right. And that's why they've kind of said going into production, because that way they can go, well, it took 5 years, but it started then.
It started then. I mean, I on the other hand too, I do think we're going to get the TAC sooner than people think.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we're going to get the ironclad sooner than
Mm,
people think. And I'm not saying like in
mm,
2 months or whatever,
mm.
but I definitely think we'll see those two, and they're pretty big ships. I think we'll see those next year.
I'll tell you another little thing. When we're talking to Ben Curtis and John Crew, you know how when the Fury came out, it said, "Wouldn't it be cool if they were turrets that kind of like disconnected?"
Hmm.
One of the devs did talk to them gave them that idea when they were doing the tack, and they actually tried to do it. So the two size 5 turrets, they did try to do it as Furies, but it was just there wasn't enough room to do it. So they ended up
Yeah.
just putting it inside it. But man, that would have been cool if you could have had Furies as turrets that dropped
Oh,
off.
that
It would
it
have
would have
been,
instantly
yeah,
it would have instantly been one of the
yeah.
most popular ships.
Oh
But,
yeah, for sure.
time and time again, we've seen, that CIG, and I get why, it's just like one less can of issues to work
Mm,
out. When it comes to smaller craft integration, a la with the Defender and the Manu Merchantman, or the Fury and the TAC,
mm,
they seem to just essentially like try out some ideas, but then ultimately go with the hangar kind of concept,
yeah,
which is fine. I think there's obviously a lot less question marks there because I
yeah,
remember originally they said the Merchantman was going to have a unique integration with the Defender.
yeah.
That obviously, and at least in the current concept at where it's
It's
at now,
just a
it's turned
hanger.
into a hangar.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just a hangar.
and to be honest, like that didn't sound very unique to me. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. All right. With that, then don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that notification bell to get all our videos, and thank you for everyone that went extra mile on Patreon at the end of the video. He's been Grim. Grim, where can people find you on the interwebs?
well, you can find me over at Twitch at the _Grim over
Mm-hmm.
on Twitch. Please come on, check me out, give me a follow. We also have our YouTube channel. Just type in Starjump and start it, and we will pop up. Please subscribe there if you wouldn't mind. And then you can find our Twitter, our Discord, or
Mm-hmm.
X, whatever you want to call it. We're all there. So
And so you guys made Hanger Link, which is like the thing that we use for fixing
yes,
my fleet and stuff like that. So it's got
yep,
like a really cool fleet viewer. You've got like the CCU helper guy that I always forget the damn name of it that Silouette made.
yeah, yep.
What
So
you do
so
similar
yeah,
stuff to
so
us as well, but what other things do you do?
Yeah, so Hanger Link is kind of funny. Hanger Link was sort of developed by Starlet, and she did that, and then we came up with the Star Jump Fleet
Fleet
Viewer
viewer,
concept,
yep,
and we ultimately decided to just bring those under one website
yep,
and have them talk to each other. So obviously, if you've used Star Jump Fleet Viewer, that is us. It's both myself, VMXEO, who does a lot of work with JRDF as well,
hmm,
and several of the StarFab team because he works on StarFab.
hmm,
StarFab is how we do flight ready ships for Fleet Viewer, all the concept ships I do. And then obviously Starlet does all that kind of back end work and getting it published. We do have other things in development, big concept that me and Ender are working out called Star Jump Fleet Command. There's a whole other thing. Starlet's got a massive, really cool project that I think will shake the entire Star Citizen world up when has that done. So it's just we're always working on projects. Some of them
yeah.
they move slow, but I think when they do come out,
Well,
they'll be useful for
yeah.
people.
They
Yep.
have been the ones you've done already have
Yep.
been. So I always look forward
Cool.
to
Thanks, man.
the next ones coming. So yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Appreciate it.
With that, then he's been Grim. I've been Execute. We'll catch you in the next one. See you, citizens.
Take it easy.